Greetings. Here we are with another page through top-down overview video for Dungeons & Dragons Rules for Fantastic Medieval War Games Campaigns Playable with Paper and Pencil and Miniature Figures from Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. This is the Book 3, the Underworld and Wilderness Adventures, Volume 3 of 3 booklets, published by Tactical Studies Rules. On the inside of the cover, you got a nice little dragon and a little notations down here of what it is, as well as a little bit of information here. We go over here, we got the title, Volume 3, yet again, full name, the copyright, the original owner of this box set. We have the Mighty Index for all your needs. So you have the Underworld distribution of monsters and treasures, move turn in the Underworld, Underworld monsters, monster determination and level of monster matrix, avoiding monsters, wilderness, castles, movement, wilderness monsters, wilderness wandering monsters, evading in the wilderness, construction of castles and strongholds, which is basically the bastion system, specialists, men-at-arms, rumors, information, and legends, player character support and upkeep, baronies, land combat, aerial combat, naval combat, special suggestions for monsters in naval combat, healing wounds, time, and afterward. As we go here, this is the overworld map. This is a nice illustration of a basic structure of a dungeon that also illustrates the fact that you can actually split the second level or third level or fourth level or whatever level you want in half and have secret passages. There's a handy dandy key right here for staircases and slanting passages and chutes. So you have staircases that go into the first level. It demonstrates that actually there's more than one entrance to this dungeon. People credit that various other adventures actually encouraged having multiple entrances into a dungeon. However, this is actually completely false. This is literally one of the first instances where there is actually indication that you can have more than one entrance into a dungeon. It just happens to go into first level. And then you have two different staircases that go down into second tier, and then you have a staircase that goes into a chute passage that goes up into this tier, and then another staircase that goes down here. But then you also have this right here, another chute right here that goes into the third. So you have more than one access into the third level. You have split in level 4. You also have a bypass that goes to 5th level. It goes down to 5.5 and 5 3/4. With zigzag staircase is going down to here. So the notion that there was only one direction you could go through a dungeon until a certain later adventure, later adventures is completely false. It's just the fact that most of the earliest versions of multi-entrance dungeons with multiple bypass sections that cut into it were exclusively small sample cross-section demonstrations or in adventures or test adventures that were never released publicly to the public. But this one right here is actually released to the public. By the way, if you want to get this entirely free, you can go ahead and look up the Dave Arneson versus Gary Gygax / TSR lawsuit. And there's a complete free copy of this book right here in that lawsuit. It basically goes over the basic structure of a dungeon. Nice little key system to explain all the little symbols here as another example from the dungeon. It gives a sample map of the Underworld level explanations from 1 to 8 on this. So you have 1 up here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yet again, as you can see, there's a unique, interesting results here going in through this dungeon here. It also splits off into various interesting cross sections, as well as staircases going up and down and few other interesting facets in this adventure, in this example dungeon. Now on to the next section here. We have some tricks and traps, as well as distribution of monsters information right here. Continues on. We have a guideline for level beneath surface, how much silver, gold, gems and jewelry, and magic odds of acquiring magical items as you go down in the levels. Level 1 to level 13 or more. There has never been truly a hard limit on how many levels you can have in a dungeon. It always just indicates you can go beyond and then modify from there. You got a nice little piece of basilisk art. A little description of what silver is, gold, gems, jewelry, and magic will be. Unguarded treasures, maintaining freshness. Move turn in the underworld advice and structure. It continues on here. A little bit of information on surprise conditions in the underworld with monsters and sighting monsters. We continue on to the wandering monsters section that explains levels beneath the surface, what kind of hit die in relationship on the scale that you would run into various monsters in it. Keep in mind that generally each hit die is considered basically a monster level. So if you have two hit dies for a monster or 2d8s, that's basically equivalent to a second level monster. So the ranges of the first is usually 1 to 2, and you can have up to 6 as you go further in. And it goes all the way down into the ranges. You can have very low level monsters and very high level monsters. And we have monster level tables based on die level, based on this levels. So there you go. Such as first, second, third, and fourth, fifth, and sixth. It's right here, as well as a little bit more information right here. Number of wandering monsters appearing in the dungeon. We got a nice little piece of artwork of a giant. I think that might have been used somewhere else. Oh, it says something else. Avoiding monster rules. Examples of moderating dungeon. Please note that some people, this is an important detail for Zygmunt Hotep. If you were to look here, there's a ref and caller, or Cal, in old Dungeons and Dragons from original OD&D, Basic, Advanced, and Advanced 2nd Edition. You were oftentimes encouraged, if you had a somewhat large party, to have a caller. The caller is basically the person that is in charge of the party, and their primary job is to consult with all the other players to determine what the other players want to do, and they formalize what the group is wanting to do and tells the referee or the dungeon master what they're going to do, in which case the dungeon master deliberates and does the results of what the party is doing. So there you go. So it's not an entirely new concept that was invented by Tunnels and Trolls. It actually predates Tunnels and Trolls still. You got a Nazgul, which is basically a enemy from Lord of the Rings. You got wilderness adventure information right here, such as a little reference to Blackmoor and a few other things. You have also a reference to Outdoor Survival, the board game, which I will cover for when I get to 750 subscribers. Or I will do the Dungeon board game unboxing when I hit 750 subscribers. But once I break 700, I will do the poll for that. You got outdoor survival information right here, castles, and various levels and die related to that whole thing. You got fighting man, magic user information, and clerics relating to their bastion or stronghold, or castle or fortress, or whatever you want to call it. You have basically instructions on guardians for your bastion or stronghold. Castle residence for the fighter relating, and levels, magic user, and cleric. You have information for the referee map, You got instructions on movement rules for various creatures traveling over land. Type on foot and flying. Large party movement rules. Terrain penalties. So you have like difficult terrain or extremely difficult terrain, or you can operate out of the rules of outdoor survival here to determine the terrain qualities. You got rest information, scale, turn. You got wilderness monster rules, such as sighting the monster, surprise, lost parties. If you have multiple parties traveling around in the environment, that's a real situation. Yet again, it calls out outdoor survival rules for that. Then you have more information on wandering monsters. Then you have this nice little wilderness wandering monsters table. Terrain type, lost, encounter, and then the die rule for type of encounter going down this way. You have clear, woods. Clearing is basically like a plains, like wide open field. Woods, river, swamp, mountains, desert, and city. And then you have the encounter type table from down here. So you got one for men and flyer and giant and lycanthropes, animals, men, animals, dragon. Just here. Then you got die for typical terrain, typical information like bandits and so forth, necromancer and so forth. Mountains, what you would run into a mountain. Desert, waterborne, flying types, undead types, giant types. Lycanthropes, swimming types, dragon types. Basic animals, optional wood stuff, optional swamps, optional arid plains, in optional mountains. Notes right here on this. And then you've got fighting man, magic user, and cleric magic item chances on this. Evading in the wilderness, castle inhabitants. You have more information on evading and your party size mounted and or on foot, as well as number of monsters encountered by party, chances of evasion. A little more clarification on that. Pursuit, construction of the castle and strongholds. So you have basic rules on how much to pay for if you want a gatehouse or a tower, a barbette or a wall, certain size and length, or tower renderings, gate, keep, and so much more for your castle. So, hey, original Dungeons & Dragons, funny enough, original Dungeons & Dragons actually has more depth of customization than Dungeons & Dragons revised 5th edition 2024. It's weird. It's more modular in 2024. You really have you don't have a whole lot of options. And if you're going to say, hey, I got the library and the workshops. Oh, nope. Right here. Number of specialists available to those positions of power. You got specialists, what their cost is. So you got an alchemist, an armorer, an assassin, animal trainer, engineer, sage, seaman, ship captain, smith, spy, and their cost by month. So weirdly enough, yet again, original Dungeons & Dragons still beats modern Dungeons & Dragons by depth. And all this makes super simple sense. You got alchemist, armor information, assassin. You could literally hire an assassin that is literally staff member, or that you can send them out to assassinate enemies. Animal trainer, engineer, sage, seaman, ship captain, smith over here, a spy. You have basic information for men at arms, classification for them, men totaling, monthly cost in gold pieces for dwarf, elf, and orc, obtaining specialists and men at arms, rumors, information, and legends section right here. So funny. Player character support and upkeep, baronies. So you can literally build not just a stronghold or a castle, but you also can rule over a region of the world with your characters, and you have rules for that. You got angry villager rules for just in case that the village that's outside your stronghold has issues. with you guys. Other worlds rules. You got land combat rules, aerial combat rules, playing arena, and written orders information. Got a nice little piece of art for an Ent and a Daijin. You got simple movement, straight ahead, turn for your naval. Categories for various creatures per type and movement. Climbing, other maneuvers. Missile fire rules, air to air, air to ground, ground to air information. Hit on the flying creatures. Critical hit table for various types of targets. Crashes, bombing information. You got special information for melee and naval combat rules right here, along with various ships, large galley, small galley, longship, merchant, large, merchant, small, sailed warship, boat, rafts, oared movement rules, so you can paddle along. You have speed rules, wind, force, and direction rules for sailing. Galleys, wind direction, turning, open seas information. And then we got more information on play areas. And then we got written orders for aerial combat, missile fire, ramming, shearing oars off, grappling, boarding, and general melee rules for naval. There's just a tie-in on that aerial combat information. Combat control information. Swimming rules for your characters. Ship capture rules. So if you want to say capture a ship, how much crew numbers, what kind of requirements you need to meet that. We got tasks here for your naval combat. Special suggestions for monsters for naval operations, like mermen, nixies, and dragon turtles, as well as water elementals, giant leeches, crocodiles, including giant crocodiles, giant snakes, giant octopi, and giant squids, giant fish, and a final note section on healing wounds and time. And then we can carry on into the next information. And then we have the afterwards right here, and a nice little piece of artwork with fight on. And then we have various elementals here. This is rather fascinating because this is essentially the Dungeon Master's Guide for original Dungeons and Dragons. And weirdly enough, the rules are structured in such a fashion that it covers a great deal of the essentials that every Dungeon Master needs for your adventures. The only difference is there's smaller artwork and no magic items in this book. The magic items are in with the monsters. But weirdly enough, this book actually covers a lot of the core stuff and even has better customization features and rules, even compared to Dungeons & Dragons 2014 and Dungeons & Dragons 2024. So it's rather fascinating that this actually has more depth in mechanics that make sense than the newer editions of Dungeons and Dragons in far less pages. Admittedly, there is less information on traps, customization of traps, customization of monsters, and customization of magic items, and customization of conditions and hazards and other stuff like that. But this is largely a book that's focused around what the dungeon, around the dungeons, the wilderness travel, and naval, aerial, and creating your own bastions or strongholds. So it's rather neat in itself. Fascinating bit of Dungeons and Dragons history there. So thank you very much for watching. I hopefully got this all evened out and good. So if you enjoy these top-down style videos more than my typical sitting and talking in front of a screen and holding a book up kind of situation, go ahead and say so in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Have a delightful day, a nice night, a wonderful weekend, a magnificent month, and see you next time. Ciao.